So on this week's episode of Be More Super, the podcast, we've got another great guest from an awesome film that's coming out on the 10th of September, which is the Manson brothers' Midnight Zombie Massacre. And yet, you know, if the title is anything to go by, you're right, it's an awesome, awesome movie. And my guest has not only been in that film, he's been in Captain Phillips, House of Cards, Alien Warfare, the list goes on. And he's an ex-Navy SEAL as well, so he's obviously keeping busy after leaving the service. It's, of course, David Meadows. David, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much for having me.
And how is everything over there at the moment? Because I like to do a check-in, and unfortunately, we're in the time where coronavirus and restrictions are quite heavy all over the place. I mean, how is everything for you? You're on the West Coast, if I'm right in saying?
Yeah, I live in Los Angeles. It's, you know, the crazy thing about the States, I mean, you know, unlike a lot of the European nations, is we kind of like every individual state does its own thing, you know. So sometimes your travel protocols, your COVID protocols, or whatever the case is different in California than maybe like, say, Florida or Texas or wherever the case is. So it's interesting to, you know, to see the restrictions actually on travel. I think it's a first for the United States, really. Like, I can't remember in my, you know, my whole lifetime of somebody ever being like, well, what state are you going to? Because you're trying to like, what? You know, unlike I feel like most of the European countries, it's like once the country decides something,
we do have
done.
Restrictions still here. I mean, there are countries that we're not allowed to fly to, and if we fly from, you've got to be in quarantine and tested. But yeah, I mean, for us at the moment, I mean, on average, it's about 50 deaths a day, which at one point we were getting over, I think, 1,800 deaths. So at one point as well, we were the worst affected country per 100,000. But, you know, it's not going away, is it? So we've just got to be safe, and we've got to, you know, follow restrictions. And I know that many don't want to, but we've got to comply and trust in the science and trust in the experts, because I'm no scientist.
Well, you know that's an interesting thing too, because it's I think, you know, so many people have been living under this ideology that is like, oh, we'll beat Corona and it'll go away, and then we won't have to worry about it. It's like, what virus has ever gone away? Like, just because, you know, people like polio, for example, or smallpox, they're still there. It's just that we're vaccinated against it. Or, I mean, shit, I think a year and a half ago or something like that, or 2 years ago, we actually had a breakout, the first recorded one in like decades, of the bubonic plague, the Black Plague, in Los Angeles.
Wow.
In one of the homeless encampments, like 3 homeless individuals tested positive for the bubonic plague. It'd been the first time in like decades in the world that anybody had a recorded case of it. It's like people thought that shit was long gone. Nope, apparently not. You know? So I mean, yeah. So I think you're totally right. I mean, like, it's this COVID's just going to have to be something that, you know, we adapt and we live with, and just kind of keep moving forward. And I'm sure once, you know, the variant, it kind of runs its course, and the vaccines get better, or, you know, or whatever the case is, or kind of more inclusive or whatever, it'll become something like polio and whatever else that people get vaccinated for, and then you just move on with life, you know. And
But this last year and a half, it's been a strange year and a half. I mean, I've got kids, so for me, I'm quite resilient. You know, you just get on with it, and I've been working through the whole pandemic. But for the kids, you know, it's been a strange experience. But I'm glad to say that they're back to school tomorrow. So yay, we get some free time. But yeah. But the great thing is that year and a half when everything was locked down, all the creative juices of these writers and producers and filmmakers obviously is paying off, because we're seeing some awesome things come to light now. But before we talk about your movie and some other work that potentially is coming our way very, very soon, I want to talk to you about being a Navy SEAL, because I'm always fascinated about, you know, different parts of the military and what they do. I'm from a military family, so my dad was in the paratroopers. My uncle was a major in the army as well. But my dad told me not to join the army. He did everything to get me away from it, and I really wanted to. And I think that's my biggest regret, is not joining the army and do my bit, because I think that you can learn a lot within that sector. But what do Navy SEALs do? Because we all seen the Charlie Sheen movie. We've all seen David Boreanaz in SEAL Team. I mean,
Yeah.
how accurate is that to what the Navy SEAls do?
You know, it's not. It's Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's based. It's on the close premise, of course. I mean, the SEAL teams are by and large, we are a tactical reconnaissance and assault team. Where we go in basically into very endangered or highly dangerous areas and very small contingents of guys to operate in surveillance or reconnaissance and then direct action assault missions. We're typically not as much on the rescue side of the operations. We're more direct action, kill them dudes rather than rescue dudes. A lot of the anti-terrorist rescue sides and everything like that is actually CAG Delta Force, does that a lot more, as well as the airborne PJs actually have a unit. I'll tell you what, dude, one of the units in the U.S. military that just doesn't get the credit that it's due, and it's elite as shit and super hardcore, is the Air Force parajumpers, the PJs. Those dudes literally skydive in behind enemy lines in small groups, like a couple guys, like 4 dudes, and go and rescue people. And they're basically combat medics, like combat skydiving paramedics that fly in there, do it, and then they come out and they go in an extremely small contingent to maybe rescue a high profile individual that terrorists are coming down and like trying to get them. I mean, like, these dudes are crazy awesome. But the teams are a reconnaissance direct action strike force, to basically execute extremely high profile assaults, on small places.
What on earth encouraged you to be in the Navy SEALs? Because a lot of people join the Navy or the Army to see the world, to enjoy being in the service. But I can imagine, obviously, being the Navy SEALs, you've just said, it's straight away combat, it's straight away action.
Yeah.
I mean, what were you thinking, and why? I mean.
So I think, man, honestly, I think it was a bunch of things, but I think I was trying to discover myself. As a kid, I went in right out of high school, so I was 18 years old, joined the Navy. I actually failed SEAL selection the first time. Went back again after I did a year and a half out in the regular Navy. I lived in Greece, actually. I was in Suda Bay, Crete, Greece. And then I came back to SEAL selection, started all over again, buds. And then I went through and I graduated that time, and, and I continued on from there and everything. But I think it was just a point of self-discovery. It's like a mix of like a point of self-discovery. I think there becomes a time when every person, especially, like a young boy, kind of wants to discover themselves and discover their mettle and figure out what their, make a name for themselves and like start doing their own thing and figure out what they have inside, what's going on and, where their path is going to be. And, and that was a large amount of it, basically just proving stuff to myself and things like that. And I think there's always been a part of me where I've never carried the beaten path, like ever, that, sometimes people will have friends or family that are like, oh, like, I work at an office job and I work the 9 to 5 and I do this. And then, God, I can't wait till work is over. So I do this. And like, I'm like, that sounds like death to me. like the mundane, like this kind of thing. And the reason it does is I see so many people that are walking through the world hating what they do. They're working as whatever job that they're working at, but they just don't like it at all. And they're like, well, I have to because I got to pay the bills, or I got to do this, or I got to do that. Otherwise, and I'm like, and they're like, but 9 to 5, it sucks. And then after that, I have my time. And I'm like, it's all your time. It's your life. So it's like, why would you spend 1 second of your life doing something that made you miserable, especially for doing it for 20 years or 30 years or something like that. I'm like, it's all your time, bro. That's all the time you have. So I've always kind of lived my life saying, I want to live a life that's full of experience and humanity and you know, and do all these things. I want to live a life that's not normal. You know, it's like, it's out of the ordinary. And that's why I went to the SEAL teams, and I got out of there, and I was like, I briefly considered it, like going into corporate America. I actually did for about a year. And then I was like, not for Dave,
not for you, not for you. But you talk about, you know, you wanted to live a life, but you know, you must have had some really, really close to the line situations being in the SEALs, you know, where that could have been cut very, very short.
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, that's part of the job. And, you know, I never got hurt in action or anything like that. I mean, I got hurt during training and stuff like that, but I never got directly injured in combat. And that was incredibly lucky, you know, and so many of my brothers and, you know, and everybody else, you know, weren't that lucky or whatever the case was. But I think that's just a risk that you take, you know, and even more so, it's part of the thrill actually of it. It's just kind of like, I mean, you're going to find in whether it's in the SEAL teams or the SAS or whatever I was telling you earlier, you know, I have a ton of mates in the SAS and the SBS, you know, and just guys that I've trained with and worked with overseas and stuff like that. And like, I think any one of the dudes would tell you, it's the adrenaline, man. You know, it's the adrenaline that actually keeps you in the job, because if it wasn't for that, you'd be like, why am I doing this shit? You know, it's like, it's kind of, you have to be an adrenaline junkie to be in one of those type of units. I mean, you just have to.
Yeah. So maybe that's not a unit for me, because I think I'll be a bit too scared. So we talk about selection. So you were talking about selection earlier on, and we see a lot of sort of examples. So I love a show at the moment called American Grit, and it's presented by John Cena. I don't know if you've seen it in the States, but basically it's a team of ordinary people, and you've got 4 mentors, and one of them's a Navy SEAL, one's in the Marines, the other one's Army. And they go through trials, and the Navy SEAL guy is always saying, oh, this is what we did in selection. I mean, how hard was selection, and what sort of things did you have to do? And was there a point where you just thought, do you know what, I want out?
Well, you know, that's actually a really interesting question. So first of all, what people don't understand about like SEAL selection is they always hear about BUDS, which is about 7 months long. That's the one with Hell Week and the, you know, like 90 or 85 or 90% attrition rate and all that other kind of stuff. You know, it's made famous in every movie, and people always talk about SEAL training, you know, like being so hard and like 90% attrition, all that stuff. What they're really talking about is BUDS, which is really only one section of SEAL selection. I think when I went through, selection was actually about 1.5 years or 2 years in total. BUDS is actually about 7 months of it. So, but what people don't understand is like, before you, if you go into a path to be a Navy SEAL, what you have to do is like, you join the Navy, of course, and all that, and then you go to your preschools and you do all your normal boot camp, all your normal military stuff, right? And then you have to start, you sign up for SEAL selection, but you have to get your recommendations, and then you have to start taking all kinds of physical fitness tests, you know, to see if, and it's not just a thing of saying, can you pass the test? It's like, well, we only have so many slots a year to start selection. So if your scores aren't in this, you know, like if you can't just pass, you have to pass great, you know? And then they give you even things like, people don't understand, you have to have perfect eyesight. You have to have natural 20/20 vision, no contacts, no anything like that, no correction. You know, you have to have perfect, no color blindness, like all these things that they put you through this battery of tests way before you get to selection to see if you even go. And that clears out thousands of people a year just based on that kind of stuff. Like, sorry, dude, you got 20/30 vision. Like, sorry, you know? So then you get to selection, you start BUDS, the 7 month and everything. And then they go through, and that, like I said, historically, I think it has like an 80 to 90% attrition rate on that. I think my class originally we started with like 300 guys, And then we started, because there's like a pre-phase class up that's like 5 weeks. So we started with like 300 dudes. 5 weeks later, we were down to like 230 guys. So we lost like 70 dudes before we actually even started training, really.
Mm.
And then in the first 2 weeks, we went from like, the 230 down to like, like 180 or something like that. And then we went into Hell Week, which is the third week, with like 170, 180 dudes. And we came out with like, I want to say like 27 or something like that. So it just slots all those dudes off. And then we ended up graduating in my class, I think, with like 30 guys or something like that after the 7 months. So we graduated from there, and then you go on to like jump school, and you go to SEER school, and then you come back and you do some other schools, and then you come back for something that's called SQT, which is SEAL qualification training, which is like another 6 months long on top of that, where it's not like Buds, where they're basically just beating the shit out of you and trying to get you out of there. Now it's like, okay, we're actually going to teach you stuff now, and like. So then you go all the way through there, but even then, guys get dropped. It's not necessarily from like quitting anymore, like it is in Hell Week or whatever. But people are just like, "Hey, dude, you're just not good enough of a shot, or your scores aren't high enough here. Or, your navigation just isn't. You're not qualifying. So then you do that, and then you basically get through all of that kind of stuff too before you finally get the Andi Dandi to graduate, and go on from there. So yeah, I mean, it's a long process in the whole thing.
And it sounds like it. Was there a bell that you had to ring if you? Was there? So at least that's true. The movies aren't all lies. Did many people ring that bell?
Thing with you everywhere you go. Everywhere you go, they bring the bell. Just for people to, and it's ceremonial. Like it's literally, you go. Everybody who quits in training has to go ring the bell, and you ring out. It's actually ceremonial as well. So ringing the bell is synonymous with like you are ending your training. It's done. You're done. And it's cool. It's a really interesting thing to see the differentiation between. There's a really interesting thing that happens, man, and they talk about it in a couple of books, and this is very, very true. It's like when you're here as a student, you're like part of this club where it's you versus the instructors. You're trying to get through it. Like you were trying to become a member of this fraternity and become a member of this way of life into this place, right? And the instructors are there to stop you because they're the gate guards to the brotherhood, and they're making sure that you don't just pass. You know what I mean? Like you have to. Because they're entrusted with the legacy of the unit, which there's a lot of guys who have gone through in all these units, but just in the SEAL teams, from my experience, the reason these units are so elite and coveted is because it's written in blood. I mean, there's heroes that have gone before and done incredible work and done all this crazy stuff to make these units the prestigious place that they actually are, and the instructor's job is to safeguard that legacy. And to keep and to make sure that the bloodline stays potent, and continues on. So there's this interesting thing that happens as soon as like the instructors will just be beating the shit out of these guys and just screaming at them and just ripping them apart and demeaning them and calling them every name in the book and doing all this other kind of stuff. And all the other students are like, don't quit, man, like keep it, doing whatever. And then as soon as the person's like, I'm done, ding, 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 ding. Literally you see this thing. It's this weird shift where you'll see the instructor be like, blah, blah. It's okay, man. Come on. Let's go. Don't worry about it. Like, it's fine. And all of a sudden, they become the nicest guys in the world, and then they just usher this person off, and then the rest of the students are like, and it's like this thing, and then the person walks away, and the instructor's like, you idiots! And then they're back on, this whole thing. And it's really cool. I remember one of the instructors told me one time that, they told the whole class, we basically, some of the other students were like kind of like trash talking one of the guys that quit, or they're like, no dude, don't be a bitch, all this other stuff. And literally as soon as he was done, the instructor like walked him away and then literally turned back to us and goes, leave him alone, he's not in your world anymore. Don't hold him to your standards anymore. Like they completely, he's like, he's not part of us anymore. Like you guys are here, we're here, he is no longer here. Leave him alone. And it's actually a very powerful separation where they're just like, he's not one of us.
Mm.
Don't bust his balls. It's like this thing where it's actually really interesting like that.
Mm.
And it's very true. They actually talk about that in a couple books or
Mm.
whatever, and it's very powerful, like really real thing.
I mean,
Anyway,
it's funny you say about the bell ringing that a lot of cancer patients, when they finish treatment in the UK, I don't know if they do it in the US, but when they finish their treatment for cancer, they ring the bell. When they leave the hospital where they've been cleared of cancer, they ring that bell in celebration. And it's quite bizarre because you said that you had that. I mean, did you have the bell at graduation? And how did that feel
So
to
yes, you
finally...
do. So like I said, you have the bell all the way through the time. It
Mm,
symbolizes you are done training, right?
mm,
So literally the last thing that happens, uh, they bring you up at graduation and everything like that, and it's the big ceremony and all this stuff, and everybody goes through and they call you up one at a time, of course, and present you with your diploma of graduation and shake your hand and all that kind of stuff and welcome you to the ranks of so they do all that kind of stuff. They get done. You go back and sit down, and once your class is done, all of your members there are done. The commanding officer, I graduated class 245, and we had Captain Rick Smithers was my commanding officer at Buds, former Def Group SEAL Team 6 commander. And he's sitting there and he shakes everyone's hand and we get done and everything like that. And he says something like to the effect, he's like, gentlemen, welcome to the ranks of Naval Special Warfare. You may now secure the class. And the CO of the class, the student, runs up to the bell with the LPO and he rings it for the whole class, signifying that we're done, and we're completed and we're moving on now, So it's like it's at that point, that's the only time you ever want to see the bell ring, where you're like,
yeah.
dude, we're done, like
Oh,
otherwise
that
it's like
sounds...
this mournful thing.
That sounds awesome. I mean, what did you do after graduation? Did you go out and have a few beers, celebrate? Was it a mad night or was it straight to work?
Well, no, it was a pretty good night. My mom actually flew in. My mom flew into town. She came to my graduation and everything. So there's like a different thing, right? It's
Mm,
so when you graduate from Buds, the first part of the selection is when you ring the bell and all that kind of stuff. And that's like there's a family portion to that. Like families come and they see you graduate and all that. But then immediately after that, you've got to go to jump school and like SEER school and SQT and all that. So
mm,
you graduated Buds, but you're not actually a SEAL. Like you still
right.
have another year or so until you're actually a SEAL. Um, so at the end of all of the selection, when you graduate from SQT, it's not a family event. It's a closed door ceremony. And it's just you and the class and the instructors that are in there. And then they come by and they actually pin you and give you your trident. And at that point, that's like rage on. That's when everybody's freaking losing their minds and going and partying and burning it down. Like
Which
doing it
I'm
properly.
sure if you work hard, you party even harder. And, having a few drinks, I suppose, is well deserved through that selection process, which sounds like hell. So, obviously, I presume you've served in Afghanistan over the years. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted to get your take on, because I know people that have served in Afghanistan. Sadly, I know people that have lost their lives in Afghanistan. And when the announcement was that we're going to take our troops out, I mean, what was your view on that? Because it's been quite mixed here in the UK. So I can only imagine, because obviously it was American-led, that withdrawal from Afghanistan. I mean, what's your view on it
Um,
in respect of people that have served and
you know, I
sadly lost their lives?
so let me say this. First of all, I don't want to comment too much on it because I don't want to ever assume whatever. But just from my two
Hmm.
cents, um, on the whole thing, I think that a lot of military members, a lot of U.S. military members, and I know globally as well, a lot of
Hmm.
friends I have everywhere else, but U.S. military members aren't pissed that we're leaving. It's
Hmm.
pissed that we're leaving with the job undone
Hmm.
and in the method of leaving. The way that actually everything is happening and the haphazard thing is like, we can't just leave and leave all of it. I mean, like it seems ridiculous. It literally is. I sit there and I go, what is the motive to this? Like there has to be something completely beyond it, because it's so, in my opinion, it's so ridiculously stupid the way it's being handled, that I'm sitting there going, this had to be intentional. There has to be something that's going on behind the scenes, or there has to be something else. Because what on earth would the United States ever want to leave billions of dollars of equipment, thousands of human lives, both American citizens and Afghani locals that have helped our forces or done anything like it's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous, to do that. So yeah, I'll just say, I think that's the biggest heartburn, is that a lot of the guys are like, we've been over there for 20 years, finish the damn job, get it done. Like otherwise, what have you been doing? Really? And that's kind of the, I think that's the big thing, is basically they're not pissed that we're leaving. They're pissed that we're basically leaving in vain.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's heartbreaking to see the last 20 years of all that hard work, and then literally within days, that country is now in Taliban control. And I watched the news. I was watching the news every single day, and there was an interview with a member of the Taliban at one of the airfields, and he was calling, the Americans and the British infidels. And what I just didn't get was he was surrounded by members of the Taliban in American, combat gear and helmets and guns that was all left behind. And I just thought it was absolutely ridiculous. But I was reading an awesome story, and I've got to give these people a shout out, because for what I've read, I think it's fantastic. Project Pineapple Express. I don't know if you've read about it. So this is.
I had a lot of friends that were actually. Yeah, I had a lot of friends that were actually actively involved.
Really, because that's like retired, and the veterans that got involved. Even a school teacher from New York that went in and rescued. And I've got to say, if that doesn't get turned into a movie in the next five years, I just think that story is just incredible. And I think that more stories should be brought to light of the efforts and what you guys do. And I love how the Americans always thank their servicemen for their service. And I think the Americans are very patriotic, and I think that the English could learn a few things from the Americans, because I think we've lost we've lost it a bit, because every time we had troops coming back from Afghanistan, instead of parades of thanks, for defending our country, there were protests, and it was just disgusting. It really, really was. So, on behalf of...
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to.
No, I was just about to thank you for your service from the UK, because it's just a job that I couldn't ever imagine being in and doing. So it's awesome for everything you've done.
Your dad and your uncle for their service as well. That's
Sorry, go on.
Just talking about patriotism. Yeah, I think. I'm really confused by a world where patriotism is starting to be looked down upon, in a kind of a way, and things like that. And people are like, "Oh, you're so proud of America," and I'm like, "Why aren't you proud of your country?" Like, I'm telling you, there's anything wrong with your country. I mean, like, I think everybody should be proud of where they live, and if there's something going on that you don't like, then change it. You're a citizen there. That's your, what I mean. But it's like, what's wrong with being proud of where you live or where you come from, or being? And it's not the same as saying. Being proud of where you live isn't the same as saying, "Oh, I'm better," or "You're worse." It's not that. It's just literally saying, "Hey, I'm proud of my heritage and I'm proud of where I come from." And we're not perfect, not trying to be, but like there's this whole thing. I don't see anything wrong with that, really. When it's not used in like a narcissistic, kind of oppressive manner. I just don't see anything wrong with that. And so I'm the first one to admit, the U.S., I've been all over the world. I've had the good fortune to live many places, and I went to theater school in Europe and everything like that. And there's so many places in the rest of the world, when I come back, I'm gonna go, God, I wish we did this in the States because this is so cool or so smart or like just whatever. Why do we not do this over there? Because it's so much better than what we do. But I think patriotism is really a thing that the U.S. is still kind of leading the world on, is just a pride of country. And I
I
think it's a
mean,
good thing for other countries to exercise like
yeah.
that.
I mean, definitely. I mean, at times I think I was born in the wrong country, because I've been to America so many times. I've been to so many football games and basketball, and
Yeah.
at the start of every football game, they'll have that giant flag out. They'll have the Navy there, the Army, and they'll sing the national anthem. It was slightly awkward though when I went to the 4th of July celebrations, and obviously that is, and I'm stood up singing along, and people are just looking at me going,
Do you know
maybe
what this is
not.
about?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you, you know what's funny,
But
man? Every single 4th of July, I have these memes and I send them to all of my British mates. I text them all, and it's like a picture of the American flag. It says like "Happy Treason Day, you ungrateful
that's what I
colonists." You
do.
know?
That is exactly what I do to all my American friends and everyone. I'm like, I send that out every 4th of July because I think it's
Yep,
hilarious. I really, really do.
it
Um,
is.
but let's talk about your move, because you've Oscar Miked, as they say, over from the military over to acting, which can be cutthroat the best of times. So how did that happen? I mean, what got you into acting? Because you have been a busy, busy man. You really have.
Uh, I used to do when I was in the teams. A lot of people don't understand. Teams have this things called like SA, support activity, and all this other kind of stuff there, where basically you learn to do undercover work and intel gathering. It's not all just direct action like kicking
Mm.
indoor shooting things, right? And I really kind of fell onto the recce side. I was a sniper. I was a reconnaissance guy. I was an intel gathering dude and all this other kind of stuff. And I just found that way more interesting. And I had started to get introduced to a lot of like the acting work, like the undercover, the personnel intel gathering, plain clothes, hanging out in bars, the work like that.
Mm.
That's typically attributed to like a lot of agency guys or whatever. But there's the teams and Delta do that and like other things like that in different capacities. And so I fell in love with like that side of things. And then so I get out and I start working for this Fortune 500 company, and I just had no idea what to do, and I was just miserable. Like I just hated what I was doing. I was like, this is death. Like this is totally death. And then literally I'm sitting there one point and I'm just kind of wondering. I've been doing it for like a while, and then literally it was July 17th of 2010. I'm literally sitting there, and I'm down in Tampa, Florida. I was at this convention. I was down at this trade convention down there, and I'm sitting in my hotel room, and I'm just like, this shit blows. And I literally have this epiphany, and I go, why don't I start acting? Because I loved that in the
Mm.
I love that whole, because my other big passion in life is I love psychology. It's like one of my greatest, like if I were going to go back to school again and get another degree, it'd be in psych. And it's
Mm.
because I'm fascinated by how the human brain works and how it controls everything that we do, and how perception and just intention and the subconscious brain. I'm a huge student of Carl Jung and all these things, right? So I was completely fascinated. I was like, oh, why don't I start acting? And it immediately was just so exciting of an idea to me, and like this lightning bolt of an epiphany. Like, of course, you idiot! Why haven't you thought of that before? Like why were you doing this a year ago or whatever? So I immediately started studying, like looking for acting schools in the area. And then I went and I talked to a guy. His name is Keith Flippin at the Actors Place in Virginia Beach. Very nice guy. Became one of my good friends and my first acting teacher, and a good friend now and an acting mentor and everything. And I started working with him. And then literally one of the very first things he tells me is he's like, hey, and I had literally been deciding I was going to act. This is like July 17th. I decided I was going to be an actor. Like August 1st, 2 weeks later or so, I decided I'm going to go and audition for my first project just to kind of get a little practice auditioning and everything. And I auditioned for a little play at a community theater, expecting them to give me the door because I'd never acted in my life. And they gave me the lead. in the play.
Wow.
And then I got seen in that. I got a review in a paper, and then an agent came and saw me, and she signed me, and then basically like a month later, I was on a TV show, and it just started. But then I continued training and training and training, because very early on I knew that if I was going to be an actor, I wanted to be an actual actor. I did not want to be a military guy that acted, or a dude that, or influencer that act. I wanted to be an old school actor, like an actual. I had such a love for the craft and for the humanity and everything that I came to understand that it represented in the actual work, which in my opinion, acting has nothing to do with being entertaining or being famous or being cool or any of that kind of stuff. Acting is about vulnerability and humanity. It's about finding the deepest, darkest truths of yourself, becoming friends with those places, and then being willing to bring them forward in a very private way in front of countless people. We have a saying in acting, it's all about being private in public. It's meaning it's nothing that you're experiencing has anything to do with those that are watching. It has everything to do with you and whoever's in the scene with you. It's a personal moment between you and I that thousands of people just get to see.
Yeah.
That's what it really is. And so I knew that I wanted to do that. So I immediately started looking at acting conservatories and like where are the best conservatories in the world, like for classical theater, like legendary schools, because just like when I decided I wanted to go into the military, I didn't, not to say there's anything wrong with anybody that goes just to whatever places, but I knew that if I was going to join the military, I wanted to be a Navy SEAL, or whatever. If I was going to join acting, I wanted to go to classical theater school and actually go the long route and the hard route. And most people kept trying to discourage me from that. And they kept saying, it doesn't matter, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that, like blah, blah, blah. You have a great look, you were military, you're only going to get hired to be military guys. You should just do stunts, you should do TA, you'll get to be on a military show. Or like they kept trying to make me basically just be what I already was, but on camera. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. It's not what I want. And then literally one of the very first people that ever encouraged me to the contrary was Max Martini. And Max and I were on Captain Phillips together. That's where we met with Tom Hanks and everything back in 2012, I think it was. And Max and I were sitting there, and there were a lot of other military guys on the movie and everything like that. And a lot of them were doing stunts or TA work, or they really wanted to play a military guy on camera with guns and all this stuff. And Max was one of the very first ones. He actually pulled me aside. We were having beers one time, and I was talking to him, like kind of picking his brain. Now, mind you, I'd been acting for like not even 2 years yet, in total,
Yeah.
And literally I sat there with him and I was like, oh, I don't know about this, I don't know about that. And he literally pulled me aside and goes, bro, you are an actor. You're a real actor. You need to go to school. You should actually do this. You are not a military guy trying to act. You're a real actor. And if you want to pursue this, you need to honor that and go to school. And so I did. He was one of the first ones that encouraged me. And then I had this drove of other people that have now become great mentors of mine that all encouraged. They were like, yes, do it. So I did. I went up to New York. I went to the Michael Howard Conservatory, which Max is actually also an alum of. And then I ended up getting seen at by a couple guys and everything else. I got invited to come up to a program called the Studio of New York, which is a non-degree granting university, but it pulls a lot of the top acting teachers from Juilliard, NYU Tisch, like all these places, and it's a 1-year conservatory up there. And I was one of 8 kids that got accepted that year, and I went up and I graduated from there. And then I kept working, and then later I got an invite to come and train and perform with the Prague Shakespeare Company. So I went and lived in Prague and did Shakespeare and other classical theater and everything.
Prague is amazing.
Oh, my favorite, one of my favorite cities.
Oh, do you know what? The beer there is just amazing, and it's super cheap. Yep. And I love that place. I've been there twice.
What's funny, man, is like one of my. So I was living in Los Angeles when I got invited to go to the studio. So I go over to Prague, and my very first day in town, the company, the Shakespeare Company, is like, "Oh, we're going to go out to dinner." I'm like, "Okay, cool." And literally, just so happened, I'm sitting there with my scene partner. The first thing we're talking about our scene. We just met that day, because she was Australian So she was from the Australian Shakespeare Company, and like she's over here, so we're like getting to know each other. We're having dinner, we're having some drinks, everyone's around, and literally we go to pay for dinner, and her card gets declined because it's international, which is weird. And I'm like, hey, no worries, like I'll take care of it. Just hit me back later. I look at the bill, and I'm like, what is this? Is this like? Did they charge us for any of the food whatsoever? It was like $10 or something, like atrocious. Where I'm like, and I'm used to coming from LA where it's like $30 for pasta, or something.
Yeah.
And like our whole dinner, literally, it was something like our whole dinner plus like tons and tons of beers and appetizers and desserts and everything else was like $50 or something for two people. And I'm like, this is insane. This is just amazing.
It's awesome.
So you just really enjoy that.
Yeah,
it's so cheap.
I can remember a meal for two, starters, mains, and desserts. I remember the wine that we chose was more expensive than the whole meal put together, and I was like, "What? This don't make any sense." So obviously you've travelled the world, learning the craft, which isn't an easy craft to learn, and obviously what direction you want to go in the type of actor that you want to be. So you've done quite a lot of TV and film, and let's talk about your current project that's coming out, because I am so stoked about this film. I want to sing from the roofs about it, because I had early access and I've watched it 4 times, and I think I might have to watch it again. Do you know what? It's just amazing. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So Max, the director, gave me a bit of a rundown, and I watched it with fresh eyes. You see, I'm one of these people that I'm not a critique. I don't watch a film to find the bad. I watch the film to be entertained and be lost within that film. I want to experience it, and it's so funny. It really, really is. And the action in it and the zombies, and it's just awesome. So this is coming out on September the 10th, and you play Carson the Crippler Murdoch. How much?
A living legend.
Yeah, and you play a wrestler, and your character is awesome. From the first moment we see you on screen, it just gets better and better and better. Sorry.
Hang on 1 second.
Yep.
I brought a prop. So we actually have.
Oh, what?
And they had these made.
That is so awesome.
It's like, I snagged this from set and took it home with me. It's like such a good little. I love this thing.
Oh. And you've got the T-shirt on, and that's an awesome design. That is a different design to the one on their website on mansonbrothers.com. Is that a special one to cast and crew?
This was like a cast and crew one that they gave out. But I mean, I think talking about that for a second. So all of you guys that are watching this interview and you see the movie, you can go on the website and get swag. You can get T-shirts. You can get cool things. You can get signed pictures and posters from the cast. All the stickers. All the little stuff that you see, all the wrestling merchandise that we use in the movie, you can go onto the website and actually pick up a copy of it or whatever the case is and have it sent to you.
Yeah, so get on that, because they're sending me a bit of swag, because they're sorting the website out. So currently it's only for people in the US. So they're sorting the website out so it's international, because I think this film is just going to be fantastic. So how much fun was it to shoot? Because it just looks like it was just an absolute crazy.
So I got to be honest, like when I first, comedy is my least favorite genre. Like I don't normally like it, because normally I just don't think it's funny. But it's not my personal thing. Like I go to be moved, and like so I like dramas, I like thrillers, and like that psychological thrillers or anything. I love those kind of things. I'm actually not a huge fan of action either, because it's kind of like, it's like superficial to me. But so comedy actually wasn't my thing. I love zombies, but I like the George Romero, the like creepy, like apocalyptic, kind of a thing. Big fan of horror movies when they're well done. So when I hear about a zombie comedy, I'm kind of like, like it wasn't this thing. But then Max comes and tells me about it, and he sends me the script. And I'm reading it, and I'm like, this actually sounds really fun. Like I loved, like, the cheekiness of like some of the characters. Like everyone's like an archetype. Every single character, we
Mm,
talk about this in every character in the movie. There's no throwaway characters. Everyone's very unique. They're all very, like you don't. There's no red shirts or like guys that are
mm.
just there to just be killed or whatever the case is. Um, so immediately I was like, okay. And now since filming the movie, I had such a good time on this movie. It was like one of my best, at the risk of not disrespecting any other directors that I worked with. It was so good. It was so much fun on this film. It was one of the best filming experiences of any type that I have ever had, and a large amount of that was just because there was this incredible sense of camaraderie and
Mm,
fun on the set that is really a testament to Max bringing in so many, because most of the people on the movie were all personal friends of his or
mm,
personal contacts or whatever that came there. He hired so many military veterans.
mm,
There were four of us in front of the camera: myself, Mike, Randy, and another gentleman. I can't remember his name, but all four of us were vets. And then there, like most of the crew and all of the stunt team were all veterans. And so it was just this incredibly cool experience. No drama, no diva-ness, and it's actually, we tell people in the interview, we tell people in the interviews all the time, it was probably the most rough movie set I've ever, I mean, you had Randy Couture and Baz Rutten on set, like two UFC fighting legends, and all these other dudes that are just martial art, I mean, legit martial arts and bare knuckle brawlers and, and all these other kind of people. And everybody was like the nicest guy in the absolute world, like it's just one of those
Oh,
things
that's
where
it's just really good to hear. And Max, of course, for all the viewers and listeners, Max Martini, you will know him from 13 Hours, one of my all-time favorite movies, Pacific Rim, and Sergeant Will Gardner, which is another awesome movie. Literally
yeah.
brought me to tears. It really does. And he directs this. And you got quite friendly with Mike and Chris, who play Stone and Skull Manson. And
Oh, great.
I interviewed them a couple of days ago, or last week I think it was. And I think shots are fired because I've got a few things to talk to you about. So first of all, Mike apparently said that you have got a change purse / man purse. What is this about? Is it true, or is he just talking a load of nonsense?
He's just talking shit. That is not true at all. But I mean, I don't know. Like if you maybe, but no. I have no idea what he's talking about there.
Oh, well, do you know what? It's the man that makes the purse, not the purse that makes the man. So if you want to rock a purse, you rock a purse. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well, typically I just wear my scarf and everything that I have going on. I typically wear that and my slippers everywhere I go. So I don't really need the purse because I can just like have a little money slot in my scarf. And sometimes a very nice beret.
Okay. Very swish. Any dirt on Mike? Anything you want to get back at him for? Anything that he's got any secrets or anything that he did funny on set?
The whole thing. I think the whole movie was it was so funny. But the big thing that was probably the funniest was just all of the trash talking, the fun, the camaraderie trash talking and the grab assing that happened in the back of the set. And I think it was Mike, me, Boz, and Randy that were like the major perpetrators of this whole thing, because literally you would have all these people. And I think it was Mike or Chris at one point in time. They're standing next to each other. We're getting ready to do a scene. It's like Mike and Chris, me, Randy, like we're all standing there. And Max comes walking over to all of us, and we're like little school circling, right? And he comes over and he's like, "Oh, hey, so guys, here's what I need. It's great. The scene's so good, but I need to see this and blah, blah, blah." And right in the middle, and we're all listening. And then I think it was Mike to Chris. All of a sudden just goes, "Schmack!" and just ball tags Chris, like just smacks him right in the nuts. Like on the thing, you see Chris double over real quick, and it's like, and these are all grown men, standing there, and he ball tags it. And Max is like, "So blah blah blah." Did you just ball tag him? Like, it's so funny, like, out of the whole motion, and we're just standing there, and poor Chris is like trying to catch himself and doing whatever.
Nice.
But I think it's just like the camaraderie on the set. Um, they did bust my nuts all the time because I am a Frito addict and a string cheese addict.
Right.
So
Okay.
on all the crafty, I would always eat it all the time. So I remember there was one day where I came into the set and I come over to Crafty and I look around and the string cheese is gone, and the Fritos are all gone. And I look around and I'm like, guys, I'm pretty chill and I don't really care about anything, but where is the string cheese? And Mike doesn't miss a beat. He looks and he goes, David, you ate it all. Like, I'm like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, ass. I had to send people to the store and get more. Like, and he's, of course, busting on me. The next day I show up at the Crafty, and there's a huge bag of Fritos and a huge bag of string cheese with my name on it. Literally, they just wrote my name on the entire thing. Like, property of Dave, do not touch, kind of a deal. But I don't know. It was great.
So it gets that bad. You get your own food now at the craft table. Also, Chris mentioned that when he first met you, he had the impression that you didn't like him because apparently you may have been in character of Carson, when you may have first met them. This is what he's saying, so dude, I don't know.
He has told me that like several times, and I'm like, bro, what are you talking about? Yeah, I tend to be, I guess you could say a little method on stuff, and especially with relationships and things, where it's like, if I know I'm going to have a bad relationship with somebody in the movie because it's a character-based thing, I kind of keep my distance as an actor because I find it's easier to not try to fake it. If I'm best friends with a guy and then all of a sudden I have to be the end, it's like, there's an underlying current of connection that I think is hard to act out. Like there's just a thing. But I tend to like maybe be a little like kind of reserved or whatever away. But I think it's just I sometimes get this reputation where people are like, "Yeah, dude, you're super standoffish and like really quiet and like intense and all this stuff." I felt like you didn't like me. I was like, "No, I was just listening to you."
I mean, for an actor, as you said, you've got to warm up, I suppose, before the cameras start rolling. Because, right, as you say, if you're in such a in-depth character, and they say shoot, how hard must it be just to flick that switch and be in character straight away? So I suppose warming up to it, being in character before you go on camera, I think is an awesome way because. That's the way you perform better. So, which is all awesome, and you obviously do all get along. So that's good.
Such a good deal. Like we're all such good buddies now. It's like so I don't know what that first moment was.
Well, to be honest, I think they were just making stuff up. Trying to row you, shots fired, as they say. But they also mentioned something else, which I'm going to talk about because you have been working very, very hard, and there is a film, and I don't know when it's coming out, so you might be able to give me some info on this. This is Amityville Moon.
Amityville Moon was directed by Thomas Churchill, another buddy of mine, produced by Bin Dong, a good buddy of mine out here, one of the nicest guys in Hollywood, and Phil Goldfine over at Hollywood.
I think I've got the poster here. There you go. The poster there.
Yep. And the character I play in this, in Amityville, I play a priest, actually. It is about as different than the character Father Peter from Amityville is about as different from Carson Murdoch as you could possibly imagine, I think. But it's going to be cool, man. I told people I finally got the trifecta. I've got a vampire show. I've got a werewolf one now. I've got the zombie one going on. Now all I really need is like to play a warlock or something somewhere, or like a witch or something. And I've got like the whole...
And then it's bingo. You've got them all.
Bingo.
You've got them all. Yeah.
Got them all.
There's a story as well. Is it Val? Is it your roommate?
Yeah. Yeah, that,
Yeah.
well, yeah, former roommate and a good friend of mine.
Yeah,
No, it
yeah.
was,
Apparently, when you was filming and being a priest, you would stay in character in costume between shoots, and you'd actually go round being a priest. Is that right? That's what I've
uh,
been.
yeah, to a degree. Yeah, I mean, I think
Good man.
it's when I was actually when I was working on that role, I wasn't trying to be disingenuous with myself or anything like that, you know. But like, I kind of what I would do is I have several friends that were. I think that there's certain things in life, certain callings, being military, being a police officer, being
Mm,
a priest, you know, there's certain things like that that it's not a job that you do, it's a way of life. You know, it is an
mm,
entire thing. And it's, even though a priest may at the end of the day maybe change his clothes or whatever, not have his collar on, he or she, you know, they're still, they are who they are, and they have chosen a way of life. Not there. It's different than like being an accountant or something
mm,
like that, you know, or like whatever. So what I do, I had several friends that were actually priests, you know, and I spent, especially in preparing for this role, I went and spent a lot of time with them and went around and just kind of looked at how they interacted in the world, like how they carried their faith into the world,
mm.
you know, and like the kind of way that they did. So while I wasn't walking around as a priest, like actually wearing a, you know, a collar, although I did, it was actually funny. There was a couple times when I was on set filming, we were on lunch or something like that, and I left. It's really interesting watching the way people interact with you because, you know, like
I bet.
early, dude.
Mm,
So I leave the movie set and I stay in costume, so I'm wearing like a priest collar and everything like that. And I walk down the street to go to like the little 7-Eleven, and as soon as I walk in there, everyone's like, "Oh, excuse me, Father, excuse me," you know, like they're on their best behavior. All of a sudden, it's like, you know, like it's okay, you know, it's this whole thing. But yeah, I thought it was a good exercise, like you talked about, you know, before jumping in there. That's just such a way of life and a way of interacting with
mm,
people, you know, kind of being in that zone, that it was just something I wanted to experience. So I was like, you know, what if I was deciding I was going to be a priest and lead this kind of a
mm,
life? How would I interact? How would I go about in the world? You know, how would I interact with people? How would I do this? How would I do that? So I just kind of tried to embody that for a
mm,
while before I stepped on camera, just to kind of see how that would feel. Um, to try to literally to walk in those shoes, you know,
mm.
before jumping on camera.
I mean, is that something you decided to do off your own back, or is that something that you've been taught to a way of getting into character and understanding your parts?
Uh, Both. You know, it's
Mm,
a thing that, you know, I learned in it is a method, you know, or a technique that I learned in drama school, and particularly when I find that a role is maybe a little bit farther from something that I have experienced or done a lot in my normal life. Um, I want to try it on for size, you know,
mm,
because, you know, a lot of acting, just like a little technique idea. Um, One of the hardest things that we do in acting, or like to get in there, is to get over your own inner critic of telling you look stupid or you're being fake or
mm,
whatever the case is, you know. And one of the easiest ways to do that is if you can accept it as the actor, if you can accept it as truth, the audience will accept it as well. But if you
mm,
doubt it, we will doubt it, like the whole time. That's just how it works. Um, so one of the things that happens is you see people like they are, you know, their normal self or whatever, and then they step up on camera, and all of a sudden they got to put on an accent.
mm,
And as a human being, as soon as you step up on there and you start putting on a bullshit accent, your brain is going, "This isn't real. This is authentic. I sound stupid. Everyone knows I'm fake." Like your critic comes on, which bleeds into what you're doing, and then all of a sudden everybody sees it. Or like a physical impairment, you know, a limp or something like that.
mm,
It doesn't ring true for you, so it
mm,
doesn't. So like if I was going to play a character that had a limp, for example, I would just limp around all day, and I would
mm,
just walk like that, and eventually my body, like I'll over exaggerate it at the beginning, and then this is like way before I even go to set, like when I'm home, you know, and I'm walking around with a limp, and then eventually you see how that sits in the body, and then it becomes a point of like an authentic where my body kind of accepts it, and I'm like, okay, this is just kind of how I walk now or whatever. And so when you actually step on camera, it looks authentic, and
mm,
I'm not doubting myself because I've been doing it all day. It's normal now. Same with
mm,
an accent, and you know, and the same with sometimes embodying roles that maybe are a little bit farther, like a priest or a military guy, if you were not a military guy, or something like that. Walk in those shoes.
Mm.
You
I
know?
mean, what you're describing is what a few actors that are living legends do. I mean, is there an actor that you've inspired to be like? You know, who really is the guy for you or the woman for you that you just think is amazing at what they do?
So I get this question all the time. It's interesting. So I don't have a single actor or actress that is like that I think is like, oh, they are the best ever. Like I don't have that. What I do have is a group of actors that I love for different reasons. I love them all equally for different
Mm.
reasons, really. Um, and and as a part of that, I don't try to emulate their style. I try to search for the same thing that they were searching for. I don't try to, I try to look for the same goal rather than follow their path on the whole thing,
Mm.
and find my own way to it, to the authenticity and to that I think that they were doing. And two of my favorite actors for totally opposite reasons are Javier Bardem and Christoph Waltz are like two of my absolute
Mm.
favorite actors to watch. Not only because I think that they're entertaining and captivating, but also because they're incredibly, incredibly human, I believe, and very in touch and grounded with themselves. Like they are just
Mm.
boom, so who they are. And Christoph Waltz, I tell people one of the things that captivates me is Javier Bardem is one of the most simplistic actors I've ever seen in my life,
Mm.
and yet he's so still and so intense and so authentic, and yet he can play 50 different roles, and it's like he doesn't change anything about him. Like there's nothing
Mm.
different, yet he's completely, you buy him 100% in every single movie
Mm.
that he's in, that he is that guy, even though he's not that different that he was in every, like,
Mm.
but it's a world of difference, like it's just,
Yeah.
it's so nuanced and so simple. um and then on the other hand, Christoph Waltz is like one of the most manic actors that's going on out there. His explosiveness and his just craziness, like a lot of the time. But the thing is unlike some like major like comedic actors, or something. I don't want to name any names, but we all know like some of the big over the top comedic actors that are out there.
Mm.
Christoph Waltz is almost as big as a lot of those guys, yet it's 100% authentic. Like he's just
Mm.
completely and utterly like in Glorious Bastards or whatever. Some of his moments where he would just go from staring at people to just be like, I don't know, like this
Yeah.
whole thing. Yet you're just so captivated by him, and he's just completely authentic in his outlandishness sometimes,
Mm.
and that's brilliant.
Mm. I mean, have you got a favourite film that you think
Hmm.
is just blows you away? I mean, mine is I've got a few. A Time to Kill, I think, is
Oh,
an
right.
awesome movie. Awesome movie. I like my courtroom drama. 13 hours, of course, which is awesome because I had Max on the show for 13 hours, and then I had Mark Geist, who was the actual guy involved with the Benghazi. He was there in the actual CIA
Mm-hmm.
compound. So that was absolutely awesome to have him on to talk about his experience of actual 13 hours. And but what's your favorite
Oh,
movie? What really
I
moves you?
Oh man, again, I think I don't have a favorite. I have multiple favorites. It depends on what mood I'm in. One of my favorites ever, though, that I can just watch again and again and again is No Country for Old Men. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
that I think is
Josh
just
Brolin. Yeah.
Josh Brolin, Javier Bardem, all
Mm.
these guys in there, Tommy Lee Jones. And I think it's just basically a master's class on acting and simplicity and story and just the way things happen. A movie that I actually just saw very recently, a good friend of mine recommended it to me, and we actually watched it, was Midsummer, the horror.
Do you know what? I haven't seen it yet.
Wow.
It's had rave reviews.
Yeah.
It's got a good old English girl in it. that was just been in Black Widow. Florence Pugh, I think her name is, or
Yep.
something like that. But
Yep.
no, I haven't watched that. It looks awesome.
Dude, check it
Yeah.
out. It's so subtly creepy.
Mm.
Where you're like, I mean, it's so. I mean, obviously it's about a ritual with a cult and like all that,
Mm.
like a kind of altar, But it's like it's so incredible the thrilling, like a horror thriller,
Mm.
and just you're like on for the ride, just going, what is going on here? Like you're just captivated because it's so tense,
Mm.
but so subtly violent and so subtly horrific. But then you're like, did I just see what I thought I saw? Like it's such a well done movie, and the acting is stupendous in it,
Mm.
and the story is creative and creepy and subtle, and it's a really well done movie in my opinion.
That's awesome. I'll put that on my list. I mean, the last movie I watched, I don't know if you've seen it, Stillwater with Matt Damon.
I haven't seen
Uh,
that yet. Is it good?
that's awesome. Actually, again, very good character development. It's about a father that goes to visit his daughter in France. She's in prison, and she's in prison for a crime she didn't commit, and he tries to get her out, and it's about his journey, and it's just a wonderful film. It's so heartfelt, and it's just brilliant. You should watch it. But what's next for you,
Well,
David? Are you just relaxing now, or have you got plans in place? And
yeah. So actually, one of the big recent developments is myself and two dear friends of mine, Ryan Curtis, who was actually also a part of Operation Pineapple, and he was in the Army and is now a director out here, and another good friend of mine, Alex Meredith, who was a Marine and an interpreter, and is just like this incredibly brilliant. Like graduated high school at 13, went to Princeton on a double major at like 14 years old. Like speaks
wow,
11 languages. Like she's brilliant. I mean, she's literally a genius, and she's a writer now, and she writes these incredible scripts and everything. So the three of us partnered up and formed our own production company. And because we have been approached by some investors and some distributors and everything like that, that basically want to partner up with us as a veteran-based production company that does not make veteran movies. So, basically, it's all we're hiring vets. Our company, actually, which is called Valhalla Productions,
mm.
and it's we hire veterans as many as we possibly can, especially behind the camra, and in the writing and all that kind of stuff. And then we actually donate to a large amount of the proceeds to veteran charities. We're going to work very closely with
Oh, that's
Max,
awesome.
on things like that. But like our first movie that we're doing is one called Oxymorons. And Ryan's going to direct it. Ryan's actually loosely based on Ryan's life. He's from Boston, and basically joined the Army to kind of go and do his thing there. And
Mm.
it is a Guy Ritchie style heist thriller drama, dark comedy. It's kind of like The Town meets Snatch, and it's
Mm.
about this basically just delinquent family from towny Boston family that turns to pharmaceutical heisting, to stealing opiates and stuff like that, to oxycodone and everything like that, to pay for funerals and like basically try to do it. And of course, it's just these guys they're just morons. They're just complete idiots, and have no idea what they're doing, and or whatever the case. These are not criminal masterminds.
Yeah.
It's not Ocean's 11. And basically it starts like drolling down through, and then the comedy of the dark comedy of errors, as things consistently go really wrong, and it goes all the way through. So that's probably the first one that we're doing. We're going to film this fall up in Connecticut, and then we actually have another one afterwards that's called Semper Occultus, which is actually about an MI6 agent, a retired MI6 agent who it's a action thriller drama, and it's about a retired MI6 agent that gets called back out of retirement effectively to go back into the field after 30 some years and rescue his former informant in the IRA, in the Irish IRA. and come back out, and do stuff like that. So it's going to be so he gets teamed up with. He's like an older Jason Bourne or 007 kind of character, but now he's retired and kind of like over the hill and everything. And he gets teamed up with this young agent, that's this female agent who basically a psychopath. And the two of them go back out into the field together to do all this stuff. And of course, it's just a psychological thriller of, who
Wow.
did it and, a crime on film. But those are the first two that are actually on our slate right now that we're set to begin production this fall and then in the spring.
So busy times ahead, which it sounds absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
And I'll keep an eye on that. And what I'll do is I'm going to put all your social media contacts adjacent with this video as well. But David, you've been a great guest. You really have. And I urge everyone to go out there and either go to the theatre or get it video on demand. That's the Manson Brothers Midnight Zombie Massacre. What a title, what a film. David, you've been a great guest.
Brian, thank you for having me so much. Appreciate it. And thank you for your support of all the military all over the world.